So finally, after much intrigue and a bugaload of leaky internet action, the Poco F4 is finally here. And of course it is somewhat confusing that it's launching after the Poco F4 GT, the gaming edition of this smartphone, but whatever, moving on. This here regular Poco F4 doesn't serve up the same crazy good performance or the dedicated gaming features of the Poco F4 GT model, and it does share a lot of smartphone DNA with the old Poco F3. But that camera has been upgraded versus the previous gen, while you also get a boost to the charging speeds and some other key improvements chucked in there. So enough waffle, let's whip the Poco F4 on out of its slightly battered box and check out the gaming, chops, the camera tech, all that good stuff. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, what do you actually get inside the box, and is it all in one piece? Thanks a lot, DHL. Well, naturally you have one Poco F4. You've got a pretty meaty 67 watt fast charger, Type-C USB cable with a tasty bit of interior red trim there, oof. And of course a highly stylish prophylactic case to wrap around your Poco F4 and keep it nice and snug and safe. And that's your whack boyo, everything you'll find packed inside of this lovely yellow box. At least it was lovely, once. Curse you DHL! So here it is, the Poco F4 in all of its raw, naked glory. And boy howdy is it a proper whopper, 6.67 inches, so actually in 2022 smartphone terms, not particularly Godzilla sized, but as someone with tiny troll-like fingers, it's definitely pushing it. Fortunately, you do get a little bit of help in the form of a one-handed mode, which you can occasionally call into action if you actually manage to master this gesture, but it is a bit of a bugger, not gonna lie. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, it ends in abject failure. Come on, you little, yeah, there we go. Thankfully, that perfectly flat display isn't surrounded by big chunky bezels adding even extra girth onto it. They're not the skinniest bezels by any means, but I've certainly seen a lot worse. And the Poco F4 is 195 grams, so you'll certainly feel it when it's stashed away in your pocket. This, unfortunately, is the night black model. Not the most thrilling of colour choices. You can also pick up the Poco F4 in nebula green or moonlight silver, if you'd like to add a splash of colour instead. And it is a glass backing, which is very shiny and unfortunately now very greasy and smudgy as well. And yeah, that's not helped by the fact that it is incredibly hot and sweaty in this studio right now. It's already 30 degrees outside, and then factor in the studio lights, not good times. The branding is pretty subtle, almost subdued, one might say, for a Poco smartphone. They've clearly learned their lesson after previous efforts. And the camera chassis doesn't jut too far from the arse, so hopefully it shouldn't be too annoying. No kind of IP rating for water and dust resistance or anything like that, but you do get a Gorilla Glass 5 screen with the pre-installed screen protector to add to the hardiness, help out on the durability front. So here it is, the Poco F4 set up and ready for action, and I won't spend too long banging on about the fact that it's got Android 12 with MiUI 13 slapped on top there, because basically every single Poco and Xiaomi smartphone these days has the same setup. And frankly, even I'm tired of hearing myself banging on about MiUI these days, but it's, you know, your standard fare. Got those great MiUI bonus bits like the control center, completely ripped off of Apple. Lots of stuff to customize, including the always on display. Got an absolute shag load of different options here. You can even create your own geeky anime style effort if you fancy. Got the usual wallpaper carousel tools and lots of themes to choose from as well. Some of which are almost certainly copyright infringing, but hey ho, down with the man, etc, etc. Got lots of gesture control, including that ruddy one-handed mode. Hey, I did it first time that time. Bananarama. Oh, lost it again. And of course all those great Android 12 features, including some slick privacy control. As for your security shenanigans, well, the Poco F4 is unlocked using an edge-mounted fingerprint sensor built into the power button. And so far seems perfectly responsive, nice and nippy to react every time you stick your digit on there. And you do have some face unlock in backup as well, in case you've got sticky digits or whatever. And the Poco F4 comes with 128 gigs of storage as standard, although unfortunately you can't expand that using a microSD memory card. It is a double-sided SIM tray, but there's only space on there for the 2 SIMs. There is no memory card slot. Although the good news is that in some regions you can just hoy a bit more cash at Poco and get the F4 with 256 gigs of storage space, so double the effort. Probably a good idea if you want to download Genshin Impact. Although no worries if you haven't got that extra upgrade cache, because you can free up a bit of extra space by deleting some of the crapware that comes pre-installed on the Poco F4. The likes of TikTok, for instance, bugger ye off. shitty games like Tile Fun as well. Although thankfully it's not actually too bad here on the Poco F4 compared with some MiUI smartphones. There's no LinkedIn or Booking.com at least. And also just remember on the software side that Poco doesn't make any hard promises when it comes to the security and the OS upgrades as well. So it'll probably get Android 13 at some point. It'll probably be in 2023, unfortunately. And those security updates may well run out after just a couple of years. Now I gotta say, I am very much enjoying that almighty 6.67-inch AMOLED display that pretty much fills up the front end of the Poco F4. Like basically any mid-range OLED panel out there, you get gorgeous contrast on this thing. Put the Poco F4 side by side with the Poco X4 GT, which launched alongside it, and there is a world of difference in terms of the level of contrast. Those rich, deep blacks on the Poco F4 are just absolutely stunning. Got full support for HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision video streaming as well, and I highly recommend watching a lot of Disney Plus, a lot of Netflix on this thing. Gorgeous visuals. It's a full HD Plus resolution panel, 2400 by 1080 pixels, so again, nice fine detail packed into every frame. Those viewing angles are as wide as you like, and bump up the brightness to the maximum levels, and outdoor visibility is fine even when you're rocking some sunnies. And props also to that selfie cam orifice, which is centrally positioned annoyingly, but it is about as dinky as it could possibly be. Dive on into the Poco F4's display settings and you can play around with those colors and make them even more poppy if you like. You can have the color output automatically adjusting depending on the ambient light, so it just makes it a bit warmer in low light scenarios. And that refresh rate still maxes out at 120 Hz, and it is set to dynamic refresh by default, but you can manually set it to either 60 or 120 if you prefer. And as well as the Dolby Vision support, Dolby has also fine-tuned the audio, so you've got Dolby Atmos on here. You've also got the graphic equalizer with tons of presets, and it is actually a stereo speaker arrangement here on the Poco F4 as well. But are they actually any good? Let's find out.
The Nothing Phone open brackets 1 close brackets has been finally officially revealed in a photo.
Alright, so a pretty respectable stereo speaker output there as well. Certainly when you bump the volume up to the maximum levels, oh my god, yeah, you're going to hear what's going on even in a really noisy environment, even in my home with kids and pets going ape. And yeah, the bottom speaker is slightly beefier than the top speakers. There is a slight imbalance, but you don't even notice it when you're just watching a bit of YouTube or whatever. And for streaming audio as well, you got full Bluetooth 5.2 support on the Poco F4, although buggeration, there is no headphone jack here. Now, while the Poco F4 GT was powered by Qualcomm's Billy Big Bollocks Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, here on the regular Poco F4, that's been scaled back to the Snapdragon 870, a flagship chipset from a good couple of years yonder. In fact, it just so happens that's the exact same chipset that was used in the previous generation, the Poco F3, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. And to be fair, the Poco F4 does perform admirably. You know, this is the 6 gig model, the base model. You can also grab it with 8 gigs if you, again, throw more money at Poco. Any little bits of jankiness you see is likely to be down to MiUI rather than the actual chipset itself. And of course, gamers will be well serviced by the Poco F4 as well, helped along by the fact you've got that game turbo mode. Just a short, sharp yank on that top left corner and you'll drag out the gaming features ready to use. Got all the usual do not disturb shenanigans. You can record the action if you like. You can also bump it up to maximum performance mode. Really harness all of the phone's resources if you're playing something like Genshin Impact. And speaking of Genshin Impact, I absolutely rinsed the Poco F4 with a good bit of gaming action using this memory guzzling Android title with the graphics settings bumped up to max and at 60 frames per second. And just like the Poco F3 before it, the Poco F4 coped admirably. I did see some little judders and stumbles in the frame rate here and there, but only when things got proper intense and not to a point where I wanted to stop playing, that's for damn sure. There was a minor irritation at best, and bearing in mind these were the maxed out graphics settings, you can just chuck it back down to medium detail settings if you want a smoother experience. Yeah, the phone kept up nicely for the most part, screen nice and responsive as well, no issues there whatsoever. That dinky little selfie orifice barely intruded on the action at all. And thankfully, even though I was playing for quite a while, the back end of the Poco F4 only got slightly toasty. That'll be helped out by the Liquid Cool Tech 2.0, including a big old vapor chamber, which is stuffed right inside of this thing. And you got your 5Gs, you got your Wi-Fi 6s, so certainly on the connectivity front, I've experienced no issues so far with the Poco F4, but I will be testing it out as my full-time smartphone for the next week or two, so definitely stay tuned for my in-depth review for more on that. As for the battery, well, this phone sports a 4500 mAh capacity cell, not particularly sizable, especially considering this phone is an absolute behemoth. But never fear, because Poco smartphones usually boast pretty good battery life, and the F4 so far doesn't seem to be an exception to the rule. I've had that screen on for a good couple of hours, demonstrating video streaming and gaming and all kinds of stuff so far today, and it's only drained the battery about 30%, so not terrible. But again, I will be using it with my SIM in there full time, so stay tuned for that review for a full final verdict on that battery life. And also, while this blower's battery doesn't recharge quite as quickly as on the Poco F4 GT, it's not exactly slow either. You've still got 67 watt wired charging support, although no wireless, unfortunately, boo hiss. Now, while quite a lot of the specs and features here on the regular Poco F4 have changed up compared with that GT model, one thing that doesn't seem to have changed at all is the camera tech. You've once again got a 64 megapixel main shooter with optical image stabilization built in, which is always lovely to see. And ahead of my in-depth Poco F4 review, here's just a few simple test sample shots that I snapped around the homestead. And as you can see, the F4 seems to cope admirably with strong outdoor lighting as well as more ambient lighting indoors. Not thrown off too much by HDR style situations. Nice color capture there. Only really seems to struggle when you get some proper low light situations. Even with the night mode, didn't seem to help out too much in this scenario. Veronica still looks like something straight out of a f***ing horror film. You've also got an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter you can swap to with a quick tap like so. It's pretty basic stuff, and of course the obligatory macro lens, why not? Is this what you want? Is it? And of course a plethora of bonus camera modes as well, including the obligatory Pro mode with a good bit of histogram action, hip hip huzzah, and you can shoot raw format images in here. You've also got your usual typical standard portrait mode for snapping living subjects, and again this seems up to snuff. And lots of other shades, oh my god. Otherwise, swap to video mode, you can shoot your home movies at 4K resolution at either 30 or 60 frames per second. And again, check back for that full review to see how this phone really holds up for shooting everyday home movies, capturing your treasured memories and all of that shenanigans. And then around front, it is a 20 megapixel selfie snapper stuffed into that teeny tiny little camera orifice. And this seems perfectly fine for your everyday selfies, whether you're indoors or out. A surprising amount of detail is captured, quite a startling amount of detail if you've got as many sags and bags as I do. And if you, yes, you want to shoot a bit of vlog action, do some Skyping with the fam, any of that good stuff, well, that front-facing camera is capable of up to full HD resolution video reproduction, and the audio pickup is absolutely fine. But again, I'll be testing this out more fully for my in-depth review. And that right there, in a nutshell, is the fresh new, finally, the regular edition of the Poco F4. That's about all I can manage before I actually melt into this seat, because I'm it's 30 degrees outside. Is this still Britain? What's happened? And of course, Muggins here is sat in this stupid little room with massive studio lights beaming even more heat onto my pale, haggard face. But thanks for watching my little video. It'd be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below on what you think of the Poco F4s, and hopefully, as I say, my in-depth review coming in about a week or so. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe, ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a bloody wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.